Is the moment two corrections officers are attacked. The attack left both officers bloody, one stabbed several times.
On October 22, 1983, two prison officers' lives were taken in cold blood. Murders carried out with military precision by the Aryan Brotherhood. That day shook America's prison system to its core, but it was only the beginning. And that's just one gang. There are others, more violent, more unpredictable, that turn prison into their own empire. Today, you'll meet them all, and by the end, you won't believe what they've done. Number 7. The 211 Crew. On March 19, 2013, in Monument, Colorado, the head of the state's prisons, Tom Clements, heard a knock at his door. He thought it was the pizza he had ordered, but when he opened it, a gun went off. He fell instantly on his own porch.
We told you about that Colorado lawman, the husband shot in cold blood on his front porch as he answered his doorbell.
The shooter was Evan Spencer Ebel, a parolee connected to the white power prison gang known as the 211 Crew. Just 2 days before, Ebel had killed real pizza driver Nathan Leon, taking his shirt and delivery bag so he could use them as a disguise. The same gun was used in both murders. Soon after, Ebel was dead too, killed in Texas after a high-speed chase ended in a shootout.
Then last night here, the shootout in Texas. Authorities believe they had their suspect. They shoot and kill him.
The crazy part? Ebel wasn't supposed to be out at all. A paperwork screw-up got him released almost 4 years early. Days before the killings, he cut off his ankle monitor and disappeared. The arrest warrant didn't come until the day after Clements was already gone. To see how this gang started, we have to rewind to 1995. Benjamin Davis was just 19 years old, locked up in Denver County Jail. One day, inmates attacked him, swinging a sock filled with soap so hard it shattered his jaw. They nearly tossed him over a third-floor railing. Davis decided that would never happen again. He started a bluff, scribbling 211 Crew on the walls so it looked like there was already a tough white gang backing him. Word spread, people joined, and the bluff turned into a real gang. The name 211 came from California's robbery code. The group's early style mixed Irish, Nazi, and Viking symbols, shamrocks, swastikas, and Norse imagery.
The Aryan Brotherhood of California has a three-leaf clover, or the shamrock. Oftentimes, white racist prison gang members will possess.
Davis ran it like an army. At the top was the shot caller, then an inner circle, crew leaders, enforcers, soldiers, and prospects. In 2002, officials even seized a printed list of members. Every hit had to be approved from the top. Orders were hidden in letters, phone calls, and even artwork. By 2005, the gang had about 300 members in Colorado. Their rules about race were a mess. Some members had mixed-race families, others flaunted white power tattoos, but loyalty was non-negotiable.
They are willing to commit assaults without question on somebody on the street, law enforcement officer who comes in contact with that individual.
Betray the crew, and you were done for. After Clements's killing in 2013, investigators went into overdrive. They picked up gang member James Lohr for questioning and hunted for Thomas Guo Lee. A Texas Rangers memo later claimed the murder was ordered by the gang's leadership, with members helping Ebel get away. No one else was ever charged, but that memo is still the strongest written link to a gang-ordered hit. They also tracked the gun's trail. Stevie Marie Vigil had bought it for Ebel. She pleaded guilty in 2013 and, the next year, was sentenced to 27 months in federal prison.
The woman accused of giving Evan Ebel a gun that to kill Colorado Prisons Chief Tom Clements and family man Nate Leon, indicted by the federal government.
Colorado struck back quietly. Using an interstate prison transfer program, they shipped the top 211 leaders to prisons across the country, including in Wyoming and New Hampshire, breaking their chain of command. But the story didn't end. On August 27, 2017, Benjamin Davis was found dead in his Wyoming State Penitentiary cell. Officials called it a suicide, though rumors flew inside the gang. And here's the last chilling detail. Before killing Nathan Leon, Abel made him record a message, a move that showed just how calculated and heartless his plan really was. Number 6. Gangster Disciples.
We are going to revisit one of the most dangerous criminal organizations in the country. A gang called the Gangster Disciples last year. They were terrorizing in the city of Chicago.
On July 22, 1978, Pontiac Prison in Illinois turned into a war zone. Over 1,000 inmates rushed the tiers, setting fires that lit up the yard. And by the time the smoke cleared, 3 correctional officers, Lieutenant William Thomas, Robert Conkle, and Stanley Cole, were dead. It took hours for state police to bring the place back under control. Inside the prison, the rumor mill pointed to one man who supposedly had the influence to make it happen: Larry Hoover, co-founder of the Gangster Disciples. Illinois parole records later even noted that he was alleged to have led the riot. But Hoover's rise started way before Pontiac. Back in 1964, on Chicago's South Side, 13-year-old Hoover joined the Supreme Gangsters. 5 years later, in 1969, he teamed up with David Barksdale of the Black Disciples to end a bloody turf war. Together, they merged their crews into the Black Gangster Disciple Nation. In 1974, Barksdale died from kidney failure caused by an earlier shooting, and Hoover's power grew inside prison and out on the streets.
I paid my debt to society.
That was Larry Hoover, the leader of the Gangster Disciples and convicted murderer.
Prison didn't slow him down one bit. During the 80s and 90s, the Gangster Disciples became organized like a company. They had ranks, rules, dues, and even taxes. By 1995, after a 17-year federal investigation with wiretaps and informants, Hoover was indicted for running the gang from behind bars. In 1997, a jury convicted him of running a continuing criminal enterprise and other charges, landing him in the Supermax prison in Florence, Colorado. By the mid-2000s, the gang's reach was huge. A 2016 federal case laid it out clearly. The Gangster Disciples were active in about 24 states, with a full chain of command that included board members, a governor of governors, state governors, chief enforcers, and treasurers. One of those charged was even a DeKalb County police officer who was secretly a member. The charges tied to the gang included murders, attempted murders, drug trafficking, and fraud. Their name kept showing up in some of the worst prison violence in America. In 1993, during the 11-day standoff at Lucasville in Ohio that left 10 people dead, the Gangster Disciples joined forces with Sunni Muslim inmates and even the Aryan Brotherhood to control one block of the prison during the siege.
Ordering killings and smuggling drugs into California prisons. That's what the feds say the members of the Aryan Brotherhood are doing.
Then, in 2018, at Lee Correctional Institution in South Carolina, gang violence erupted again. 7 inmates died, and more than 20 were injured. Investigators later said it started as a cell robbery, but quickly exploded into a battle involving Bloods, Crips, and Gangster Disciples, with contraband cell phones and homemade knives turning it into a massacre. Their influence even stretched overseas. In 2005, in Germany, Army Sergeant Juwan Johnson was beaten to death during a Gangster Disciples initiation near Ramstein. The Department of Justice said the ringleader was a Gangster Disciples set leader, and multiple U.S. Air Force members were convicted. All that chaos in prisons and even halfway around the world was nothing compared to what was brewing back in Chicago. The so-called peace with the Black Disciples didn't just fall apart. It shattered, and the streets turned into war zones. In 1991, Mickey Bull Johnson, a major Black Disciples figure, was gunned down. That killing kicked off a wave of revenge shootings, each one pushing the borders of South Side neighborhoods further into blood territory. But even with Hoover locked in the country's toughest prison, his name wouldn't fade. In 2022, he sent out a written statement saying he wanted nothing to do with the Gangster Disciples anymore.
Larry Hoover wrote, "I want nothing to do with it now and forever."
A message that also showed up in Illinois parole records. Just a year earlier, Kanye West teamed up with Drake for a massive free Larry Hoover concert in Los Angeles, putting Hoover's name and story in front of millions of people. Law enforcement, however, wasn't starstruck. In 2023, a federal jury took down 4 top Gangster Disciples leaders, convicting them on racketeering charges tied to murders and witness tampering. The pressure didn't stop there. In 2025, the FBI came out swinging with fresh federal extortion charges against suspected members, proving the gang's name still carried real power and real consequences. Then came the headline that made jaws drop. In May 2025, President Donald Trump commuted Larry Hoover's federal life sentences. But before anyone could imagine a homecoming celebration, reality hit.
But this afternoon, President Trump disagreeing, commuting Hoover's 6 life sentences on federal convictions to time served.
Hoover was still locked up. He remains in prison, serving a separate Illinois state murder sentence under tight restrictions. Number 5. Soldiers of the Aryan culture. On November 28, 2007, inside USP Beaumont in Texas, things went from calm to bloody in seconds. 2 inmates, Mark Isaac Snar and Edgar Balthazar Garcia, were being walked back to their cells like it was just another day. But it wasn't. Somewhere between the hallway and the bars, they slipped out of their cuffs, pulled out shanks they had hidden, and went straight for 2 officers. Both officers were stabbed before the inmates grabbed the keys, unlocked a nearby cell, and rushed in on Gabriel Roan. They stabbed him over 50 times. Roan didn't survive. The officers somehow did. Snar and Garcia got federal death sentences for it and are now on death row at USP Terre Haute. A former guard later said both men were so dangerous they were supposed to be escorted one at a time, with 3 officers each.
Many guards are concerned about their own safety.
That safety rule was broken for just a few minutes, and that's all they needed. These 2 weren't just random killers. They were tied to the Soldiers of Aryan Culture, SAC, a white power prison gang born in Utah. The founder, Tracy David Tinman Sweeney, started SAC in 1997 and built it like a mini army. There were generals at the top, then captains, lieutenants, sergeants, and soldiers. Sweeney even admitted in court that he was the founder when he pled guilty to racketeering, which earned him 20 years in federal prison. Getting into SAC isn't like joining a regular gang. Recruits have to prove themselves for 6 to 12 months by carrying out missions, usually violent attacks ordered by higher-ups. Pass the test, and you earn the SAC patch, a tattoo of a swastika wrapped in an iron cross. Some members add SS bolts after doing violent acts.
But rather than focus on a plan to release inmates right now,
this is a group where rank is earned through blood, and the rules aren't just for enemies. They come down just as hard on their own members. On June 9, 2014, inside the same Beaumont prison, SAC members Christopher Kramer and Ricky Allen Fackrell cornered another SAC member, Leo Johns. His mistake? Breaking the gang's code by gambling and drinking. They planned his death for months, then stabbed him to death. In 2018, both Kramer and Fackrell were sentenced to death. Court records showed that Kramer was a general, Fackrell was a lieutenant, and SAC's rules banned drinking and gambling as strictly as they pushed white power beliefs. In the early 2000s, law enforcement went after SAC hard. In December 2003, 12 alleged leaders were charged in Utah with racketeering, a move meant to scatter them across the country. By 2005, Sweeney was locked away for racketeering, extortion, and meth trafficking. Even after big arrests, SAC didn't disappear. In 2020, a federal task force in Utah charged SAC members and their allies with trafficking meth and guns. Agents seized firearms and cartels supplied meth, showing that even from inside prison walls, these gangs still move drugs and give orders on the street. Number 4. Black Guerrilla Family. On August 21, 1971, San Quentin Prison erupted like a battlefield. Gunshots ripped through the yard, sirens screamed, and when the chaos finally stopped, George Jackson was lying dead alongside 3 correctional officers, Sergeant Jerry P. Graham, Officer Frank DeLeon, and Officer Paul Krazins, and 2 inmates, John Lynn and Ronald Kane. Officials said Jackson had been trying to break out with a 9mm pistol hidden under a wig, forcing open doors in the adjustment center and setting off a chain reaction of violence.
Prison officials believe the 6 deaths yesterday partly resulted from a breakdown in security.
His supporters called it an execution. Whatever you believe, that day carved the name Black Guerrilla Family, or BGF, deep into prison history. But this gang's story didn't start that day. The Black Guerrilla Family was formed in 1966 inside San Quentin by George Jackson, W.L. Nolan, and George Big Jake Lewis. This wasn't some loose group of cellmates. It was built on black power politics, military-style discipline, and a mission that went way beyond just making it through your sentence. Jackson's book, Soledad Brother, made him a national symbol and brought in people who saw him as more than just an inmate. Roll back to January 13, 1970, at Soledad Prison. A yard fight breaks out, and a guard in a tower opens fire, killing 3 black inmates, W.L. Nolan, Cleveland Edwards, and Alvin Miller. 3 days later, guard John V. Mills is beaten and thrown from a 3rd-tier balcony. George Jackson, Fleta Drumgo, and John Clutchette, the Soledad brothers, are charged with his murder. The case makes national headlines and turns the Black Guerrilla Family from a name whispered in yards into a group everybody inside had heard about.
3 inmates, among them George Jackson, one of the so-called Soledad brothers, were also killed.
Fast forward to San Quentin in 1971. Different witnesses tell the story in different ways, but the parts everyone agrees on are clear. Jackson had a gun, prison doors were opened, and people died. The officers' names are still etched on memorial walls, and the blood spilled that day only made the divide between the Black Guerrilla Family and their rivals in California's prisons even sharper. From the start, the BGF wasn't just about politics or ideas, it was about power. They built muscle in the drug trade, extortion, and contract killings. Outside the walls, their names showed up in moments that grabbed national headlines. In August 1989 in Oakland, Huey P. Newton, co-founder of the Black Panther Party, was gunned down by Tyrone Robinson, a BGF member looking to move up in rank and grab more control over drug territory. Robinson later got 32 years to life. A decade earlier, in 1979, Berkeley civil rights lawyer Faye Stender, once a supporter of prison activists, was shot and paralyzed by BGF member Edward Glenn Brooks, who called her a traitor. She later died by suicide because of the trauma. Brooks was sentenced to 17 years for attempted murder. Fast forward again to Baltimore in 2013. Inside the Baltimore City Detention Center, BGF boss Tavon Bulldog White had guards smuggling in drugs, phones, tobacco, and cash. On a wiretap, he bragged, "This is my jail." And he wasn't lying. 4 female officers even became pregnant by White. He eventually got 12 years in federal prison for running the whole operation. Court records painted the picture in detail. Guards brought in marijuana, pills, and cell phones, sometimes during sexual visits with inmates. The money moved through green dot cards and straight cash handoffs. This wasn't prison gossip. It was backed by wiretaps, guilty pleas, and jury convictions. In California, the BGF has stayed on the short list of the state's most dangerous prison gangs for decades. They've fought bloody wars with the Mexican Mafia and the Aryan Brotherhood, and, when it suited them, teamed up with Nuestra Familia. Alliances change, but the game plan never does. Control the tier, control the phones, and control the flow of everything that matters inside those walls. Number 3. United Blood Nations. On April 15, 2018, Lee Correctional in South Carolina became a full-blown war zone. What began as a simple theft inside one dorm turned into hours of carnage. Inmates swarmed into the common areas, swinging homemade knives and stabbing at anyone in their way. By the time the sun rose, 7 men were dead, and at least 17 others were bleeding and broken. The violence raged for nearly 8 hours before officers could wrestle back control. And this wasn't just random chaos. This was gang business. Bloods, Crips, and Gangster Disciples were all in on it. But the Bloods were the biggest in this area. When the smoke cleared, a state grand jury hit 29 inmates with charges and named the 7 who didn't survive. To understand one of the biggest players in that fight, you have to go back to where the United Blood Nation began. The year was 1993, and inside New York's Rikers Island jail, 2 inmates, Omar O.G. Mac Portee and Leonard O.G. Deadeye McKenzie, pulled scattered jailhouse crews together under one banner, United Blood Nation, or UBN. In the beginning, it was about survival. Black inmates were often targeted by bigger Latino gangs like the Latin Kings and the Netas, so the Bloods formed to protect their own. But what started as defense quickly grew into organized power and a reputation that reached far past Rikers' walls. Once members got out, UBN spread fast. Sets like the 9 Trey Gangsters, G-Shine, also called Gangster Killer Bloods, Money Murder, and 1-8 Trey, short for 183 Gangster Bloods, started locking down territory up and down the East Coast. Even today, law enforcement still points to those sets as UBN's backbone. This wasn't a ragtag bunch. UBN ran like a business with a written code called the 31. Members paid monthly dues, followed ranks, and took orders from the top. A council of godfathers decided policy. The dues funded drug deals, fraud schemes, and contract hits, with a portion funneled back to leaders in prison. And being behind bars didn't mean losing control. In 2018, a federal jury found that Pedro Magu Gutierrez and James Baxton were still running UBN operations from New York prisons. Both men were convicted in Charlotte, North Carolina, on RICO charges and got 20 more years added to their sentences. Court records labeled Gutierrez the 9 Trey godfather and head of the UBN Council. That kind of power even reached suburbia. On October 23, 2014, in Lake Wiley, South Carolina, Douglas and Deborah London were shot dead at their own front door. The gunman was a UBN member. Months before, Douglas had been robbed at his mattress store. From his jail cell, a UBN leader ordered Douglas killed so he couldn't testify, calling Deborah collateral damage in a letter. The shooter was rewarded, ranking up in the gang. The FBI later dug the murder weapon out of the dirt near another gang member's house. Court records clearly show how UBN started. Between 2002 and 2003, founder Omar Portee was convicted on 10 counts, including racketeering, murder conspiracy, and fraud. He got 50 years and today sits in ADX Florence, America's most secure prison. Their symbols are loud and clear: CK for Crip Killer and 031 for the 31 Rules. Law enforcement guides still flag these as common UBN tags. Even pop culture couldn't avoid their shadow. In 2018, rapper Tekashi 6ix9ine was charged in the Big 9 Trey Gangsta Bloods case. He pled guilty, worked with prosecutors, and the court files revealed the shootings, robberies, and leadership structure of the set. Number 2. The Mexican Mafia. On January 31, 2022 at USP Beaumont in Texas, a fight exploded on one of the cell blocks and turned into a bloodbath. 2 inmates were stabbed to death, and within hours, every single federal prison in the country was locked down. Prosecutors said MS-13 members had gone after Sureños and a Mexican Mafia associate in a quick, planned ambush.
It stands for the letter M in Spanish. Instead of saying Mexican Mafia, people would say, I'm M.
That one attack was so intense that it froze movement in prisons nationwide. The Mexican Mafia, or La M, runs like a prison government. They have clear rules, taxes, and punishments. In California prisons, almost all Southern California Latino gangs fall under the Sureños banner, and they take orders from La M. That includes big names like 18th Street and MS-13 when they're locked up in California. Refusing a kill order isn't an option if you want to survive. La M started in 1957 at Duell Vocational Institution in Tracy, California, when a young inmate named Luis Huero Buff Flores and others decided to unite Southern California inmates and control the prison rackets. From there, the influence spread fast, from prison yards to city streets. One of the most famous early figures was Rodolfo Cheyenne Cadena. On December 17, 1972, at Chino Reception Center, Cadena left his cell knowing enemies from Nuestra Familia were waiting. They stabbed him dozens of times and threw him from an upper tier. His death locked in a prison war between Norteños and Sureños that still shapes California's prison politics today. Even before that, there was the shoe war at San Quentin in 1968. It started over a stolen pair of shoes, but exploded into a riot that left one La M associate dead and 19 inmates stabbed. That fight drew the line between Northern and Southern California gangs, cementing the Sureños under La M's control inside. La M's power isn't just about violence, it's about control. In the early 90s, Joe Pegleg Morgan used the gang's influence to order an end to drive-by shootings in parts of East Los Angeles. For months, the shootings stopped. When La M says stop, people stop. On the street, gangs pay taxes to sell drugs on their turf. Inside, the Mexican Mafia and their Sureño soldiers control phones, debts, and contraband. Any crew that refuses to pay or breaks the rules gets hit with a kill order. Law enforcement has been trying to break La M for decades, but the cases keep coming. On August 6, 2024, a federal sweep hit Florencia 13, a major Sureño gang, with 11 indictments for drugs, guns, and violent crimes, the kind of network La M taxes and controls. Then, on January 21, 2025, the San Diego District Attorney announced 39 arrests in a case tied to Mexican Mafia orders.
Ties to the Mexican Mafia. 7 defendants were arrested last week at multiple locations throughout the county.
The charges ranged from murder to extortion and weapons trafficking, with court papers saying the orders came directly from inmates and filtered to the streets. The Beaumont killings were a perfect example of that reach. The DOJ says 7 MS-13 members coordinated the attack. One man was stabbed twice in the chest to spark the chaos, and then they chased and killed a second target. In 2025, leaders from that case were sentenced to long federal terms. The Bureau of Prisons confirmed that one violent hit triggered a lockdown of the entire federal system. That's the real danger with La M. A shot caller can be locked in a 6 by 9 foot cell and still pull strings on the street. From Tracy in 1957 to Beaumont in 2022 to San Diego in 2025, the pattern hasn't changed. Orders inside, violence outside, and money flowing in between. That's why La M still sits at the very top of the prison power chain. Number 1. The Aryan Brotherhood. On October 22, 1983, USP Marion in Illinois went from tense to pure chaos. That morning, guard Merle E. Klutz was walking inmate Thomas Silverstein back from the shower. Out of nowhere, Silverstein slipped free, pulled a homemade knife, and stabbed Klutz again and again until he was dead. Just hours later, inmate Clayton Fountain did the same thing to guard Robert L. Hoffman. 2 officers killed in one day. The prison instantly went into permanent lockdown, and that control unit style became the model for the supermax prisons America uses today. The Aryan Brotherhood, known simply as the AB, already had a reputation that made officers uneasy. Born at San Quentin in 1964, The AB built its image around white supremacist beliefs and one brutal rule: blood in, blood out. You join by spilling blood, and the only way you leave is in a coffin. They're small in numbers, but their kill count is terrifying. The FBI once said they're only a sliver of the prison population, but they're behind roughly 18% of prison murders. That's why even the toughest correctional officers get tense when they hear the name. Silverstein became the poster boy for that fear. After killing Klutz, the Bureau of Prisons put him on a no human contact order, lights on, no touch, no normal conversation, for 36 years straight. He died in 2019.
67-year-old Thomas Silverstein died this month. He was in intensive care following a surgery
at ADX Florence under those same conditions. The killings at Marion forced a change in how prisons worked. Movement got tighter, security got heavier, and eventually, ADX Florence was built, the Supermax prison designed to keep the most dangerous inmates locked down around the clock. But the AB didn't disappear in those conditions. In the 90s and 2000s, they weren't just stabbing rivals. They were running drug empires from inside. Meth, heroin, even taxing other inmates for protection. They ordered hits with coded notes called kites and through contraband phones. In 2002, the feds came hard with a massive RICO case. Prosecutors even tried to get the death penalty for several members. In 2006, top leaders Barry Mills and Tyler Bingham were convicted and given life without parole. Mills died in 2018 at ADX, but by then, the AB's system was so well built that nothing slowed down. That same trial showed just how far their influence reached. A witness testified that mob boss John Gotti himself asked the Aryan Brotherhood for protection in prison. Because even the Mafia knew who ran the yards. The cases didn't stop. In 2019, California prosecutors said AB leaders were using smuggled cell phones to move meth and heroin and to order hits. Ronald Renegade Yandel was named as one of the top shot callers. In April 2024, a federal jury convicted 3 more AB members in another huge RICO case. By December, Yandel and William Sylvester each had 2 life sentences. Prosecutors said Sylvester earned his AB patch by killing another inmate in 2001 at California State Prison, Sacramento. In May 2025, even more AB members were sentenced for murders, drugs, fraud, and robberies tied to that same conspiracy. And the reach doesn't stop at the gates. In 2024, the Justice Department charged 68 members and associates of the SFV Peckerwoods, a white supremacist street gang accused of helping fund the AB through fentanyl, meth, guns, and even COVID-19 benefits fraud. The Aryan Brotherhood isn't big, but it doesn't have to be. The name alone is enough to keep people in line. It runs on fear, loyalty, and blood. If you're in, you follow orders. In return, the gang backs your every move. Decades later, the AB is still proving it can run drugs, make money, and take lives from a concrete cell with nothing but a smuggled phone or a note slid under a door. Thanks for watching. See you in our next video.